me about it. Come on, let's talk about it. Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and your purpose. You know it's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Slay your goals, live out your dream. Right now. Inspirational perspective.
While the leadership series, that got a lot of love, while the leadership series was, I would say, very important, we're about to get into what I believe is most important. And that is really beginning to take a deeper look into this thing called vision. Like, what is vision? How do we thrive in uncertainty? And there's uncertainty all around us. Uncertainty, I would say, for us. And I really, as we talk about vision, I really want us to understand the difference between what we, where we are, perceive as uncertainty and the game that others are playing. Because is this war a surprise to everybody? Just sit with that for a moment. And I'm going somewhere because we have got to get to a point. Later I'm going to share something I heard from a monk who gave a TED Talk some time ago. And it always stuck with me. He called it the 5 hindrances. And I'm going to share these 5 hindrances later in the show. But perceived, and again, remember, I'm saying perceived uncertainty because it's uncertain to us. It's uncertain to me and you when we hear these things. Like, when you hear that about Chase Bank, does it make you think like, oh my? Like you have a oh my moment, Ade? Yeah, right? So then there's some uncertainty that's with that, right? Then when I think about the Larry Finks of the world, the George Soroses of the world, and when I say these names, by the way, these are people who are associated with basically a quarter of the money in circulation in the world. Like, so let's wrap that amount. Hold on. Is it a quarter? Maybe a little less. Maybe it's 20% of the money in circulation in the world. Still, it's a lot of money. Okay? It's a lot of money. Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock. The 3 companies that control the majority of what happens in our government. Like when you think about like this. When you think about the commander in chief, most folks would say, well, that's President Biden. And I would disagree with you. Why would I disagree with you? I disagree with you because any of us who are intelligent and understand United States politics knows that one of the big problems we have is the lobbyists' ability to influence our politicians, right? So I'm the one that votes for you, but I'm not the one that puts money in your campaign. And because I'm not the one that puts money in your campaign, and unfortunately, as Americans, we're so distracted, we only believe what we hear often. I hope y'all really listening to me this morning because I'm going somewhere with this, but we only believe what we hear often. Then the person who I can hear most often, that, by the way, aligns with what I believe. I believe. I believe. I said that on purpose, right? Then that's who I vote for. And that person has already given their loyalties to the lobbyists. The lobbyists, when you think about who has the most money, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, that is who they are beholden to. So if right now you're trying to make sense of the genocide that's taking place in Palestine, understand that this is about money. This is about money. And we're talking about lots of money. And if you really want to understand the conflict, I don't have time to get into it today, but maybe I'll tell you, Slayer Goals members, I'll break it down for you next week on our call. But if you really want to understand this conflict and what it's about and why American media can overlook the death of women and children in such large quantities. I mean, it is. It comes down to money. And then when you think about what the United States is most vested in when it comes to money, then it's probably the black liquid stuff. But that's not surprising, is it? Okay. All right. That's not what we're talking about. But what I want us to understand is what occurs as uncertain to us is not always uncertain at different levels. And the more money, the more understanding. And this is why, as we navigate all of this, it's important that we're operating within our own God-given vision. Is what's happening in the Middle East right now a distraction? It's hard to call it that because it is a horrible atrocity. It's a horrible atrocity, and it's something that deserves our attention. It really does. And at the same time, the only way to support and to stop things like this from happening is for you and I to all be powerful within our ability to manifest the visions we have for our life. The reason why all the protests, all these people, like people can't stop it, is because we don't have the means. We don't have the means. My prayer is that in time, many of us become so purposeful, and purpose brings power, that collectively we have the means to stop things like this, horrible atrocities. And this is not the first time that the United States has played a role in this type of crime against humanity, because that's what it is. The other thing that we spoke about when we talked about leadership towards the end was this notion of how, and how is a distraction. And I'm going to come back to that. Because what's most important and how we should be thinking about our priorities and how we move forward is in alignment with the vision. And the vision does not articulate how. The vision provides a destination. The other piece is we closed talking about the power of innovation. And I want to pick up right there. This whole idea of innovating within your business, innovating if you're employed, innovating at your job in a way that makes you incredibly valuable. And believe me, right now, in this business environment, if you are working for someone, then you want to be considered valuable because the numbers are starting to come in. It's happening. And if it hasn't happened, it will. That's just where things are with this particular economy. And I always chuckle when I hear analysts and newscasters say, we may be in a recession. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah. That's last year's news. So I think that's a good prerequisite for where we're going to go in today's conversation. All right. So a couple of foundational elements for this conversation. I want you to write this down. I've shared this before, but when we talk about vision, there's a particular way of thinking. There's a particular mindset. And if I'm going to get into vision in any depth, this is where we have to go first. So I want, to kind of set this up this week, we're going to talk about the mindset that it takes for a person to hold and follow a vision. Because it doesn't make sense for me to teach what vision is and how to set the vision if you can't maintain it. So let's lay the foundation around what it takes for an individual or group of people to hold solidly to a vision in the first place. And there are three things in particular that I want you to consider, and I want you to write these things down. The first is gratitude. Gratitude is the foundation of every vision. Gratitude. Blessings, the blessings that you have received to this point. And right now, maybe somebody's like, what blessings? Well, the fact that you can think that in your mind is a blessing. That means that your mind is good in some capacity. So the fact that you can think that is a blessing. And it is very important that if you intend to hold a vision for your life, that at a minimum, you can count the current blessings. This is foundational. Write that down. My ability to express daily gratitude is the foundation of holding and following and consequently achieving my life's vision. First and foremost, there's nothing else that can be more important, period. There's nothing else that can be more important. All right, so that's number one. Then if we go to number two is the act of faith. The act of faith. What is faith? Faith is belief plus action. So then I'm grateful for what I've already have, and I believe that the Creator has more. I believe this, and I believe it to the extent that I act. I'm willing to take action. And this is why I say I'm starting with mindset, because this requires that we begin to move ourselves into a particular mindset. A lot of people believe that they have faith. And they believe they have faith because they believe. But they don't take action. And belief is just one component of faith. There are a lot of people who call themselves, quote unquote, believers. And it's easy to be a believer if my faith isn't being questioned. When I say my faith, my belief isn't being questioned by action. Would you go to jail for that belief? That's true faith. Would you let them lock you up, or would you go, well, no, I was just saying that. Because then you don't truly believe it. You might tell yourself you do, but consider then it's just an ideal. It's an ideology, but not something you deeply and fervently believe. Anything you deeply and fervently believe is followed by some level of action. The saying, put your money where your mouth is. It's like, okay, I'm willing to act on that. All right, I'm willing to act on that. That's number 2. Write that down. The act of faith. Leaping is the act of faith. And when I'm acting with faith, I'm not worried about how. I see clearly the very first action I'm supposed to take, and I take it. Okay. Number 3, and this is for those who are a bit more advanced. If you've never set a vision before, then it's 1 and 2. If you have set a vision before, then number 3 is powerful. And this is how you can create more. A lot of times I'm talking to people, especially young people. It's very little patience. How do I get it now? I want it all right now. How do I go from where I am today to becoming a multimillionaire, Linnell? Like how do we, I was chatting with a brother at a networking event on Wednesday evening. And he was like, how do I get where you at? I'm like, well, I got 12 years on you. And I'm not saying that you can't, but there's a process. And here's the biggest differentiator. When you have had a vision or elements of a vision that you've seen manifest, then that gives you the ability to stand in faith in the current vision. You're like, oh, I done seen the Creator work on my behalf. I've seen it. I think this is what makes those who are mature so powerful. That's why I like talking to men and women who have some years on me. Because the things that they're convinced in, they are convinced in. Right? And they have a reason to be. There's wisdom in that. Like they have a reason to be convinced in that because I've seen it work. Not just one time. Not just 2 times. Not just 3 times, but multiple times. Like, young man, I've seen this work. Right? And that's incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful. And so if you were someone where you have seen a vision that the Creator give you come to fruition, then you have got to lock down on that. I think that's the power of testimonies. When people say, here is what the Creator has done for me. I like listening to those type of stories because not only does it remind me of what the Creator's done for me, but it reminds me of the principles of gratitude, action, and foundational belief. Foundational belief. Okay, so then if we look at the broader context of what it means to actually have a vision and to live in alignment with that vision. Because again, remember, the answer to the question of uncertainty for leaders is have vision. So this is why we're talking about this. Have vision, Linnell. How is that the silver bullet? Well, I'm gonna express why. Okay. So if that's the answer, then we have to get underneath what keeps us from having a very clear vision for our businesses, for our lives, for our children, etc. And here is one of the real impediments, and this is a bit tricky because we're told to live in the now, right? And most of us live in the right now, at least most of us who aren't plagued with trauma, because those of us who are plagued with trauma, I'm going to talk about this in a bit, we live in the past, right? So all of the actions we're taking right now are based on past events. And we're doing everything we can to make sure those past events don't recreate themselves. So this is how I'm going to dress. This is how I'm going to, everything is based on the past. But for those of us who don't have deep trauma like that, then most of us live in the right now. And what do I mean by that? I make knee-jerk decisions based on right now. Right now. I make all types of moves based on how I feel right now. Ooh, I'm really hungry. What is there to eat? There's a McDonald's. Right now. Right now. Saw a video of a guy who found a burger underneath the seat of his car that had been there for a couple of years. I don't know how that's possible, but that's a whole nother situation, right? And the burger was still intact, right? And the reason we will eat that is because we're not thinking about the future. We're thinking about right now. I'm thinking about an urge and a need that I have right now. I need to fill my belly. I need the satisfaction of fullness in my belly. And so I make a decision in the right now. And as a result, we create our lives from the right now. Now think about this. You create your life from the right now, which is why many of us years later go, I wish I had known. But it's not necessarily about knowing. How do we know what's going to happen? Right? If I had known to eat better, I would have done better. And what I'm saying to you is that's a lie. Because most of you knew. You knew it wasn't right. But you were making a decision from in that moment, not looking at the consequence of it today. You were living in the right now in that moment. Well, if I know, Linnell, you're wrong. If I knew, I would have done something different. Well, it's hindsight is 2020. That's why tomorrow morning, there'd be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks saying what the quarterback in the game today should have done. Right? Very easy. I mean, people make a living. Sports analysts make a living on what should have been done. Right? Because now we know exactly how the play was going to play out. But in the moment, you don't know how the play is going to play out. And for many of us, when we pull into the drive-thru, whatever fast food restaurant, it's quote unquote the last time I'm going to do this. Until I'm living in the right now again and I have the same urge in my tummy. I say it that way because in many ways we conduct ourselves with that level of immaturity. Okay. So most of us live in the right now. We make our decisions from the right now. And as a result, our lives are created from the right now, which is why we are not prepared for the future. Like, wrap your mind around that one. And when I started the leadership series, 6 or 7 weeks ago, one of the things that I wanted to make sure we understood is that 1 in 3 of us have trauma. And that means that we live our lives in a way that protects us from reliving any of the horrible life events we had before. So not only am I living in the right now, but my right now is distinguished or decided by past events. So how can I be prepared for the future in any way or any capacity? And the problem with this, and this is why I'm starting here before we go into vision, because I can teach you how to set a vision. But the problem is that if we don't address mindset first, well, then it's just training. It sounded nice, but what did I really get from it? What did I really learn from it? And here is the issue with powerfully moving from the right now, because you would think that just by me sharing this and the awareness that comes with it, that people would say, wait a second, he's right. I need to inform how I live today based on who I intend to be tomorrow, right? As a matter of fact, the gentleman I was talking to at this networking event, he asked me a question about his current relationship. He said, yeah, I'm in this relationship. She's really pressing me to get married, but I don't. You're an executive coach. You're a coach. Like, what advice would you give me? I'm like, well, first, I don't give advice. It's not what I do, right? But let me ask you a question, because that's what I do. I ask questions so you can give yourself advice. He says, okay, what's the question? I said, the woman you're with today, Does she fit into your life's vision 20 years from now? Based on what it is that you want to do. Maybe you want to be a senator. Maybe you want to be a CEO. Maybe you want to be president. Maybe you want to run a foundation. Whatever it is that you want to do. If you were being recognized for that and someone threw a mic in your wife's face, would you go, oh no? Or would you go, I can walk away. She's got this. And you should have saw how big his eyes got. Because I asked him a question that informs the right now from the vision. He got clarity. Now, I don't know if she's going to win or not after that, right? I don't know. Like, she might have went home and say, baby, got to pack your things and go. I don't know. And you can't say, Linnell, you did that. No, I asked the question. And that question provided clarity. And that question was in alignment with his future. And because we live in the right now, most of us aren't thinking about the future. So, because we're wired this way, in order for us to reorient to a way of being that is vision focused, our subconscious mind has to be reprogrammed. There are three things. Only healing. When I say healing, through the means of therapy, through the means of coaching, through the means of affirmation, all these things deal with the subconscious mind. Only healing, the creator himself, right? And that's a powerful force. Let's break this down. I'm going to take the calls at the beginning, right at the break. There's scientific evidence for God. I shared this in a show years ago. Not even years. It might have been 2020. I'll dig it back up because I think a part of this series, we need to talk about this. There's scientific evidence for God. And the scientific evidence takes us all the way down to the atom. If you listen to scientists talk, most of them will say that the atomic theory is the most important discovery to science. And that is that everything is made up of small particles. Okay. And these small particles, at the very essence of these particles, is a force that is holding them together and that is orienting them in their being. What do I mean by their being? A piece of wood is wood because at the atomic level, the vibration is saying that it's wood. I am Linnell Harris is Linnell Harris because at an atomic level, the vibration says that I am Linnell Harris. And that's where God fits into this because some of us need healing at an atomic level, like every cell in the body. Every cell in the body needs to be healed. I got to hit this first, folks. I got to hit this. And here's the thing. When you become aware of this, you know what to ask for. And we talked about this with the 12 universal laws. And then you can begin to shift your frequency and vibration into a way of being that allows you to pursue the vision the Creator has given you. So only healing, God, and that's healing at an atomic level, right? I was thinking about this the other day. The Bible says that we should keep our mind stayed on Him. All right, so what does that mean? What does that mean? If I keep my mind stayed on the Creator, that is a consistency, a vibration and a frequency that actually opens me to His purpose. I think sometimes folks get so spiritual. Like say, keep your mind on the things of God, young man. And it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, the things of God are your purpose and the vision he gave you for your life. They make it so spiritual, it sounds like you should be thinking about, men walking around in white robes or something, like, on the clouds, like I should keep my mind. Like, it's like, no, it's very simple. To keep your things stayed on the things of God is to be constantly questioning and aligning with your purpose and the vision that God has for your life. It's that simple. And if that's where you are, then your vibration begins to align with that. So here's the third. The third is standing in faith based on visions you've seen come to fruition. So let me give this as an example. So you had a vision that the DuSable Center would be cleaned up. And I don't know how long you held that vision before it happened, but it happened. And so the third component is then celebrating that and building on top of that. So then when, like the work I heard that you're doing now, Sel, is you're in Michigan City, like for the year as you craft what's next in Chicago. And I would build that on the wins that I've already had, the visions I've already achieved. And so that's the third component. Number one, the foundation of vision is gratitude. I love the share around that you cannot be grateful in the presence of fear. Let me give you an example of what he means. If you are in a relationship and you feel like you're being taken advantage of, that's a fear-based thought, right? I'm being taken advantage of. So in that way of thinking and being, you cannot be grateful for your significant other. All you can think about are the negative things that they bring, right? Because, I'm afraid I'm being taken advantage of. So it's difficult to see the full scape. I hope you all really get this, because I love that he brought this piece. He's like, hey, you can't have gratitude in the presence of fear, because fear is going to curve out anything that you can objectively think about that takes you to another level, right? So if I'm in a relationship, I feel like I'm being taken advantage of, and that's all I can think about, it's going to be very difficult for me to shift into a mode of gratitude for that individual. Like, and so we have to actively choose gratitude. You have to notice fear and shift out of fear into gratitude. And that's why almost everything is funny. I was talking to my therapist this Friday and it was like, everything comes back to me. Like most everything comes back to me, and with anybody, like if your marriage ain't what you want it to be, then it's you. Yes, I mean, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, man, okay, it comes back to me. Here's what I need to do. Here's what I should be doing. And I'm sharing that because I thought that was powerful, even for yourself. If you're like, well, I never can really get this done, that's fear-based, and it's going to be very difficult for you to come from a place of gratitude and build a powerful vision. Here are 3 things I'm going to talk about in terms of shifting your mindset to the type of mindset that allows you to have powerful vision, the type of mindset that allows you to sustain powerful vision. Mental acuity, mental warfare, mental inputs. Mental acuity, mental warfare, and mental inputs. If you are all about taking yourself to the next level, mental acuity. What is mental acuity? Mental sharpness. Your ability to think, your ability to be keen on intellectual activities. That's what I mean by mental acuity, okay? Mental acuity, mental warfare, because you're at war mentally every day. Some of us, your war may be different from others. Some of us are, We going back and forth about a piece of cake. I will, I won't. I will, I won't. I will. Either way, you're in constant mental warfare, okay, in some capacity. And then your inputs are the weapons. We're going to talk about how these are the weapons that dictate whether or not you will win the war. What kind of weapons? And how these three areas intersect to create your mindset. Okay. I'm going to start with a story. When I was 26 years old, I had a major car accident. And my car was totaled. In fact, when I got hit, I was making a left-hand turn, and when I got hit in that car, I got hit so hard that every window in the car shattered. It's like an explosion, man. I mean, that's how hard the car got hit. I was uninjured. Like, not a scratch. Not a scratch. And I remember riding in the ambulance because even though I was like able to get out the car and walk around, when the firefighters were first on the scene, fire truck pulled up before the ambulance did, and I was walking around and I was checking on everybody else, right? There's 3 cars in this accident. And when the firefighter got there, he said, "Whose car is this and where are they?" And I said, "That's my car." And immediately he said, "Lay down. Lay down on the ground." It's wet. Lay down on the ground. You could have internal bleeding. Something is wrong with you. Your car can't look like that, and you be standing around. So then they put me in the ambulance. And I remember riding in the ambulance, and when you're in an ambulance, anyone who's been in an ambulance, you get strapped in. They strap everything in. They strap your head, everything. So you just kind of like, you can't move. And all I could see was out the port. It was like a port in the ceiling. And so I could see we were going under bridges and viaducts and things like that. That's all I could see. And as I'm strapped into this ambulance, I began thinking negative. And as I was thinking negative, I would notice that my positive weapons would enter the conversation and go, "Don't think that way." Again, this morning we're talking mindset. And mindset means that you have to have weapons on deck, but the weapons have to already be uploaded. This is the biggest problem for many of us. Our weapons aren't uploaded. And so at 26, if any of you all know me, at that point I had been through maybe 3 to 4 years of mentorship with the individual who made a huge impact in my life. I had been reading books, and so I had weapons that every time I thought negative, I would switch to positive. And what happened next in my life had a lot to do with my mindset today. Because the negative thoughts I was having were around things like, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to buy another car." And I want you to think about how I am perfectly fine in this ambulance. Like, I don't feel any pain. And now imagine that if I were injured, I would be thinking about that. But because I don't have that to think about, I'm thinking about the car. I'm not thinking about, "Wow, I'm so grateful. Look at me. I can breathe. I'm alive." Now, I wasn't thinking about those things. My mind was reeling in between negativity and positivity around my things. I had just bought a piece of property, that piece of property I put all my money into. And I'm like, I don't have money to put on a down payment on the car. Like, these are the things I was thinking about when my life had just flashed before me only moments before that. Like, this is how we're wired. And this is why I really want us to talk about mindset. Because as human beings, how we think doesn't always make sense. When we lose things, we perceive the consequences as negative because we can only evaluate these losses from the present moment. Let me say that again. When we lose things, we perceive the consequences as negative because I lost something. I perceive it as negative because I can only evaluate that loss in that present moment. I don't see how that loss dictates my future. Right now, somebody's going through something, and you're trying to make sense of it in the right now. And this is why vision is so powerful, because if you're looking through the lens of your vision, all of a sudden the loss starts to make sense. Maybe I'm supposed to reorient. Maybe I'm supposed to go in another direction, because have you ever thought that maybe loss is a blessing? Have you ever stopped and just kind of sat back and looked at where you took L's in your life and it turned into a blessing? My ex-girlfriend told me she couldn't deal with me anymore if I wouldn't let her move into my house. So I lost her. Months later, I met Pam. Oh. Do you think at the time it felt like a loss or a win, though? You all follow what I'm saying here? Sometimes we have losses, and those losses feel, I remember when she walked out, I was like, man, but it's not right for us to live together. Like, we ain't there yet. And so I can't, if she's giving me an ultimatum, either I move in or we break up, then we got to break up. I got to hold to that. But it felt horrible. It felt bad. You get where I'm going? But I knew it wasn't right, and it actually created space for something wonderful. So we typically are unable to fully understand the opening that these losses create in our lives, and the many positive things these openings make possible. So what if all loss is not negative? And this is why mindset is important. Now, Brother Mike brought up this point about human beings and the complexity of the human being. But I want us to look at ourselves in another way. Human beings are puny in comparison with other species that roam the earth. Like, we're puny if we look at the physical components. And outside of insects and fish, we are physically among the weakest of most creatures on the earth. Case in point, I'm working with leaders, or in conversation with leaders who will be going gorilla trekking with me in March in Uganda. One of the things that comes up is, gorillas, oh my goodness. Now, why would a human being have a reaction to a gorilla that way? Because to be in the presence of a gorilla makes you feel physically insignificant. Period. Like, the strongest man on the planet is no match for the weakest gorilla. Think about that. The strongest man on this planet, the strongest human being. Can I say man? Sorry, y'all. Okay. The strongest man on the planet is no match for the weakest gorilla. I ain't talking about a baby. Y'all get my point, right? The weakest silverback. Let me say that, right? No match. The weakest silverback, the one that got kicked out because he was weak, the strongest man can't even, in no way can he match him. The strongest man on the planet alone is no match for a lion. If we're just talking about physical prowess, you will become a meal. So we are among the weakest. Human beings are among the slowest. And we also have the weakest senses among most mammals. You think about a dog. A dog can hear things. Ever been around a dog? All of a sudden they get up, ears pop up. You're like, what? Because you can't hear it. You can't hear it. You ever seen a dog sniff the ground and then start following it? You get down on your knees and try to sniff it. You can't smell it. You can't smell it. This morning when I woke up, it was dark and foggy. A human being, it's horrible conditions for us. But a jaguar, well, not quite the same. A jaguar can see you coming off yards away in the night, in the fog. We talked about the eagle. Everybody wants to be an eagle. Eagles can see miles ahead of them. And then even the bat can fly around with sonar radar. Wolves. A wolf can run for days. Think about that. We celebrate because we ran for 6 hours. You finished the marathon. 26.2. This brother ran 26.2 miles. We celebrate. A wolf can run for days and cover vast amounts of land in short periods of time. You can't even remember where the bedpost is because you stubbed your toe. And by the way, when you stubbed your toe, you went down. You couldn't even move. Humans. So how have we survived then? Well, you already know. It is the God-like pieces of who it is that we are that make us who we are. If we were, I really want you to think about this. If there was no God, then we know we're no different from a pig and a horse. We're just meat. But because we have consciousness and a mind that gives us the ability to think and imagine the unseen and go create it, that is what distinctly sets us apart. Distinctly. Now, if that's the thing that distinctly sets us apart, why aren't you using it? Somebody right now will say, oh, I'm using it. Oh, I'm using it. Okay. Okay, you're using it? Well, then are you imagining the unseen and creating that in your life on a regular basis? Because that's what vision requires of you. Our greatest gift is to create. Our greatest gift is to create. And what scares me most is most of us as human beings are waiting for someone else to create something for us. You'll see it happen as this recession continues. They'll start talking about jobs and unemployment. And then people will say, I need for them to create more jobs so I can work. You need someone else to create something when you have the capacity to create? And this is why vision is what we want to focus on in uncertainty. Vision gives you the capacity to create and innovate. This is our greatest gift, and it is also our greatest curse. It's a two-edged sword. So let's go back to this. If the strongest man cannot defeat a gorilla or a lion, then how have we been able to subdue them? Right? In Genesis, it says that we were given dominion over the beasts of the field. How is it that the fastest man can run, 30-some miles an hour? The strongest man can lift not even close to what a gorilla can lift. But how is it that we have dominion? Well, it's because we can think. It's because we can think. Now, this may be offensive to some, but I want to ask a question. How often are you really, truly thinking? How often are you really, truly thinking? Now, some of you, you're thinkers. You're like, oh, I think, Linnell. Okay. But a lot of us, we have allowed others to do the thinking for us. So then, here's the second question. What level are you thinking on in your life? What level are you thinking on? Like when you think about your life, what level are you thinking on? And are you thinking at a creative capacity See, because some of us are thinking, if they would just, that's victim thinking. That's not vision thinking. That's not responsibility thinking. That's victim. I wish they would just, I wish President Biden, I wish the Republicans, I wish the Democrats. That's thinking, but it's not the type of thinking I'm thinking about. It's not the kind of thinking I'm talking about. Vision starts with intentional thinking. Now, earlier I said thinking, this ability to imagine the unseen and create it, is our greatest gift, and it's our greatest curse. Let me explain why it's a curse, why it can be a curse. The reason it can be a curse is because we create what we think about. And if someone else is informing my thinking, that means I'm creating whatever they've informed me to think about. This is why we have to be so thoughtful about our inputs. This is why we have to be so diligent about what we allow to enter into our mind. Because if I am a creator and I have the capacity to create, let me back up a little bit. So if science says, by the way, the most prolific Nobel Peace Prize winning scientists, they have documented, might be hard to find because this stuff gets buried. I did a whole show on it. They've documented that there is some superior being that has all this in motion. When I say all this, life has all this in motion. Many of us have different names for that superior life force being. Some call it the universe, Allah, God, Yahweh, whatever you call it. This is the force that created us and gave us a piece of it, right? Spirit. Let's listen to a YouTube video where scientists said the toughest part of science is spirituality. And I'm like, yeah, because like that's where scientists want evidence, right? And at some point you have to step back and say, there's no evidence for what I feel. There's no evidence for what I've experienced, but the evidence is in the experience. Okay, so spirituality. So then if I have a piece of the spirit of the creator, just a fraction, and the creator is the creator of all things. You think about the magnificence of the universe and all the galaxies in the universe. And just the Milky Way. Just one, think about that. The Milky Way is just one galaxy in the universe. And within the Milky Way, we are these insignificant, seemingly life forces that have this experience. The creator has created all these things, then I'm a micro creator, and all I have to do is look around me to see how wonderful the creations are of men who are made in the image of the creator himself. Remember, what makes us significant is our ability to think and utilize our minds. So then how do we make room for a new way of thinking? How do you make room for a new way of thinking? It has to be shifting your mindset. So mindset is a combo of what I have, what I do with it, and where I get more. Write that down. Mindset is a combo of what I have today. That's your mental acuity, your knowledge. What I do with it. How many people know what they're supposed to do and don't do nothing with it? So it's not just being intelligent, but it's actually using the intelligence. And then where I can get more of that. Where I can get more of that. So how is mindset created? Wherever you are right now, how is that mindset created? Let's talk about mental acuity. Here's the thing. Many of us, we have to learn to tug against our constraints. Linnell, you don't understand. I've always had financial issues. Tug against your constraints. Linnell, you don't understand. I've always had, relationship issues with men. Tug against your constraints. Linnell, you don't understand. I've always been just a little bit overweight. My family is big boned. I'll always be like this. Mental acuity means the ability to tug against constraints. What are constraints? Let me tell you a story. When a baby elephant is born in captivity and the trainer wants to ensure that he can control the elephant, he places a rope around one of the calf's legs, and the rope is attached to a sturdy wooden post. And this is the first and most important step that the trainer will take to keep the elephant within a certain proximity for the rest of its life. Think about that. If I can catch you young, then I can constrain you for the remainder of your life. Some of us got caught young. Like, your mindset may not be your fault. But you're listening today, and consider that in listening today, you can begin to slowly use a hacksaw to work away at the chains of constraint, like to actually cut the chain of constraint. This is what this show is about. So the wooden post will cause the rope to pull on the calf's leg whenever it tries to move away from the allotted proximity. The trainer says, I need you to stay here. The calf will say, I am free. I am a creation of God. I should be able to go anywhere. And it will move away, and then they get pulled back, and they get pulled back. And the elephant is young. His primal instinct is to be free. Your primal instinct when you were a young person was to be free. And many of us got constrained. In the classroom, we got constrained by a parent. We got constrained by a sibling. Somewhere, we got constrained. So this calf will enthusiastically pull against the post day after day, week after week, month after month. But after tugging for a few years and never pulling free, the young elephant will give up. Before the elephant can even vaguely begin to understand his future potential and power, it is convinced that it's powerless. How many of us right now, you're listening to this, health, you feel powerless. Relationship, you feel powerless. Finances, you feel powerless. Career, you feel powerless. Spiritually, you feel powerless. I'm here to tell you that it's time to pull against the constraint. Powerlessness is a mindset, nothing more. Nothing more. And you can shift your mindset to one of power. I am powerful. 13,000 pounds later, maybe a decade, that same elephant can be bound with the same rope to the same small post and totally confined. Mindset. Confined not because it can be contained, but confined because the elephant believes that it is useless to tug. I want you to ask yourself right now, have you taken so many L's that you have actually told yourself that it is useless to tug? See, because again, everything starts with awareness. And if that's where you are, just write that down right now and say, man, there's a part of me that's given up, Linnell. There's a part of me that has actually given up. And if you can actually say, this is me, that's a win in itself, because now we got something to work with. Because here's what I want to tell you. You are powerful. You are regal. You are great. What boundaries exist in your mind that no longer exist in the system? What boundaries exist in your mind that no longer really truly exist in the system? And this right here, man, let me tell you about our community. Like, we are so clear on the boundaries that existed in the system to the point where we almost recreate them in the system. Linnell, are you saying racism isn't real? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's not as prevalent. But for some of y'all have racist experiences every day because you're looking for them, right? Your mindset is set on racism. What boundaries exist in your mind that no longer exist in the system? You are powerful, regal, and great. Yet, you're being constrained by a lack of confidence. You're being constrained by some level of ignorance or fear. Is this how you'll choose to live the rest of your life? Mental constraints, parental constraints, whatever the constraint came from, what mental development opportunities do you have right now? And it could be simply as, I need to break free. And are you willing to make room for a new way of thinking? And will you have to fight to create a new way of thinking? Let me give you an example. I was listening to a old Earl Nightingale video. He was giving a story about how he flew into Charleston and he asked the gentleman to ride him around. He got a taxi. He said, I want you to take me around Charleston. I want to see the history of this city. And this taxi driver was taking him around, and then they got into a more rich part of town. And in this rich part of town, there were these beautiful big homes. And in these beautiful big homes, the taxi driver was telling him how that home there, it's like 40 rooms in that home. This home over there, they have like 30 rooms. And then the taxi driver paused at a stop sign. He turned around and he looked at him. He says, this is where all the crooks live. Mindset. Mindset. The taxi driver will never own a home like that if he doesn't think he's a crook. You see how he created a barrier? That's where all the crooks live. But if you were to ask someone like me, I would say that's likely the homes of the people who actually built Charleston. These are the homes of the people that established that community. These are the homes of the people that created jobs for that community. It's how you think about it. It's your mindset. If we look at mental acuity as your ability to actually decipher your constraints, then if we take it a step further, then the ability for me to cipher my constraints means that I have to be willing to go to war with myself. See, a lot of us, man, we spend a lot of time at war with other people. Some of us, we're at war with our spouse. I'm going to convince them to do this. It's like, well, maybe you should convince yourself first. Maybe you should be working on you. I'm going to convince my mother, my father, my sister. What about the battle in your own mind? Here's the thing, like most of us will never encounter an actual battlefield. I pray God that I never have to encounter, or anyone that I know has to encounter an actual battlefield. I think that's a good thing that we don't have to encounter that. But if you were told that you would have to go to battle after you get over the anxiety attack, I'm guessing that you want to go to war prepared. If I were to tell you all that we will be engaged in urban warfare right here in Chicago in the next 6 months, and I want to take you through a preparation for that. We're going to teach you weapons training. We're going to teach you urban warfare tactics. And you really believe that war was coming, I believe we have a line. People say, I need to learn, I need to know how to take care of myself. So then what would happen is we would lay out weapons and you would choose your weapons for battle. If you were maybe a smaller person, you might say, I don't know if I want the Mossberg shotgun. The recoil on that is too much. I like to take something that's light and, can shoot off quiet. Give me the M16. I'll take that. That I can, shoots off lots of rounds. A big guy might say, I want a big gun and, it's heavier and I want to be, but you would choose your weapons accordingly. And I bet you spend time learning about those different weapons and how to use those weapons. When you go to the army, you have to learn how to take the weapon apart and clean it. And all these things are a part of preparing for battle. And I'm certain that in this short period of time, in the next 6 months, if we truly were going to war here in Chicago, that you would gain a full understanding of your weapons. You would gain a full understanding of the battlefield, which weapons work best, the pros and cons. I'd also speculate that you'd be a bit concerned about who would be going into battle with you. Are we going to be broken down into divisions? Who's going to lead that division? Who will be my companions, my comrades at arms? All these things would concern you. Like, am I wrong yet? And here's the thing. We are actually in one of the fiercest battles every day, but I don't think we ask those type of questions. Who are the people I'm running with? What weapons do I have? Weapons of positivity. Weapons of optimism. Like, what weapons do I have? Like, we're not asking ourselves these type of questions. But you are at war. The only difference is your battlefield is not in the Middle East or in Ukraine on the front line. It's not in the desert. It's in your mind. Every day in your mind. And the biggest question I have for you, because, we could talk about vision all day. I can teach you how to craft a vision, but if you can't win the battle in your mind, then your vision will float on, and be gone. Just that simple. Because you got to maintain the mental battle that actually keeps it as a focal point for how you move and what you do. Mindset. Are you taking your mental battle as seriously as you would if your immediate life and safety were on the line? And I think we're comfortable, man. The images of war on your television screen might make you a little uncomfortable. But the narrative that the news is telling, it's very easy to get comfortable with that. In order for this series to really land for you over the coming weeks, it will require that you regard your mind as the most intense battlefield that you will ever encounter. Your mind is the most intense battlefield that you will ever encounter. And the things that you allow to enter your mind through what you see, hear, read, watch, feel, taste, smell, and every other imaginable input eventually serves as a weapon that will either help or hurt you. And you supply those weapons based on what you consume. Another way to say this, the extent to which you will win or lose the war in the battle for your mind has everything to do with the weapons that you provide the enemy. The enemy, procrastination, self-doubt, fear, and every other self-defeating quality that you might feed. Hey, my inspired peoples, Linnell Harris here, certified ontological coach and trainer. I'm so excited that you're watching the channel. By the way, did you know you can catch the show live at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. every Sunday morning? You can. All you have to do is go to my Facebook stream, Coach Linnell Harris, catch the stream live, or you can listen to the radio show via iHeart at WVON 1690 AM. But since you're here, If you love the content, I ask that you share it, like this particular video, and subscribe to the channel. I hope you're having a great day.